The sun beat down on the dusty yard. It was like any other Tuesday. Inmates milled about. Some played handball against the faded yellow wall. Others just walked in circles, waiting, always waiting. Then, a commotion near the rec building. Two COs, Miller and Thompson, marched out. They looked serious, more serious than usual. Their faces were tight. They headed straight for HardMike. He was sitting on an overturned bucket. He was laughing with a couple of guys from B Block. HardMike was a big guy. He had a reputation. Not a bad one, mostly. He just knew how to get things. Small things. Comforts. He looked up. His laugh died in his throat. He saw the COs coming for him. He didn't run. He didn't even flinch. He just stood up slowly. Miller started talking. We couldn't hear the words. But the tone was clear. It was accusation. It was trouble. HardMike shook his head. Thompson moved to his side. He was ready to grab. The whole yard went quiet. The handball game stopped mid-bounce. Conversations trailed off. Everyone turned to watch. It was like a nature documentary. The predators cornering their prey. Except here, the prey usually knew the game. HardMike knew. He put his hands out, palms up, a gesture of surrender, or maybe defiance. It was hard to tell with him. Miller pointed towards the administration building. Thompson nudged HardMike forward. They walked him away. No one moved for a long minute. The silence was heavy. You could feel the tension, like a stretched rubber band, ready to snap. HardMike was gone, just like that, swallowed by the system. We all knew what it meant. A shakedown was coming, or worse. Someone had talked. Someone always talked. The sun still beat down, but the yard felt cold. We all felt a little more exposed, a little less safe than before. The routine was broken. Later that day, the whispers started. They always did after a bust, like flies buzzing over something dead. Who snitched? What did they find? Was it serious time for HardMike? The rumors swirled around the chow hall. They echoed in the dorms. They clung to the air in the laundry room. Everyone had a theory. Everyone was an expert. Most were just scared. Scared it could be them next. Scared of the uncertainty. HardMike was a fixture. Now he was a ghost. The main rumor was about a stash. HardMike's legendary stash. He was known for having good quality weed. Not the dirt weed some guys tried to pass off. His was the real deal. People said he had a hiding spot. A place no one would ever think to look. A place even the COs missed during shakedowns. He was clever like that. He wasn't flashy, but he was smart. He knew the prison's blind spots. He knew how to operate. I knew HardMike, not well. But we'd traded a few times. A book for some extra soap, some commissary stamps for a better pair of socks. He was fair. He once mentioned something, a hint about his secret. He said he liked old things, things people forgot about. He gestured vaguely towards the rec yard, towards the old unused bleachers, the ones covered in bird droppings and rust. People only see what's new, he'd said with a wink. I hadn't thought much of it then. Now his words came back to me, clear as day. Old things, forgotten things, the bleachers. Could it be that simple or that complicated? The yard was full of eyes, full of ears. If I knew, maybe others did too, or maybe they just suspected. The thought lodged in my mind, a tiny seed of an idea, a dangerous idea, but the pull was strong. Life in here was dull. It was gray. A little green could change that, for a while at least. The idea of HardMike's stash wouldn't leave me. It followed me from my bunk to the chow line. It shadowed me during my work detail in the kitchen. The kitchen was hot, steamy, full of the smell of overcooked vegetables. My days were a blur of routine. Wake up, count, eat, work, count, eat, recreation, count, sleep, repeat. The thought of finding that weed was a spark, a tiny flickering light in the monochrome landscape of prison life. It was a risk, a huge risk. Getting caught meant this HU, solitary confinement. It meant losing privileges. It meant more time added to my sentence. I'd seen what happened to guys who got caught with contraband. They disappeared into the hole for weeks. They came out looking hollow, broken. The COs would make an example of you. They enjoyed that part. They needed to maintain control, or the illusion of it. Fear was their best tool, and they used it well. It was a powerful deterrent. But what was the alternative? More of the same. More bland food, more sleepless nights, more anxiety about the future. The weed offered an escape, a small vacation for the mind. It also offered currency, real currency. In here, a little bit of weed could get you a lot. Better food from the kitchen, extra commissary items, protection even, respect. It was a dangerous currency, but it was valuable, very valuable. I thought about HardMike's words. People only see what's new. I spent a couple of days just watching the COs, watching the other inmates, watching the old bleachers. They sat at the far end of the yard, neglected, almost forgotten, just as HardMike had hinted. Kids from a local school used to sit there, years ago, before the new rec center was built on the other side of the compound. Now they were just a relic, a perfect hiding spot, if you were brave enough, or desperate enough. I decided I was a bit of both. The gamble seemed worth taking. Once I decided, a strange calm settled over me. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but it was manageable. Now it was about logic, about planning. I started to observe the CO's routines more closely, especially CO Reynolds. He usually had yard duty in the late afternoon. Reynolds was predictable. He liked his coffee. He liked his crossword puzzles. He mostly stayed near the tower entrance. He rarely ventured to the far end of the yard, unless there was a fight. The best time, I figured, would be during rec hour. Late afternoon, the sun would be starting to dip, casting long shadows. Most inmates would be engaged in activities, handball, chess, or just clustered in groups, talking. The bleachers were isolated, away from the main flow of traffic. I needed a distraction, or rather, I needed the yard to be its usual noisy self. A lone figure slipping behind the bleachers might not be noticed. If I was quick, if I was quiet, I didn't need any special tools, just my hands and my nerve. I replayed the scenario in my head, over and over, walking casually towards the far end, pretending to look for a lost handball, slipping behind the bleachers, the search, the retrieval, slipping back out, rejoining the flow. It had to look natural, unremarkable. Any hesitation, any furtive glances, that's what got you caught. You had to own the space, even when you were breaking the rules. The waiting was the hardest part. I chose a Thursday, 2 days after HardMike's bust. The initial frenzy had died down a little, but the memory was still fresh. It made the stakes feel higher. I ate my lunch slowly that day. The mashed potatoes tasted like cardboard. The mystery meat was even more mysterious than usual. My appetite was gone, replaced by a buzzing energy, a mix of fear and excitement. Tonight, it would be tonight, or never. I pushed my tray away. Rec hour arrived. The yard filled up just as I'd hoped. The usual cacophony. Shouts from the handball court, laughter, arguments. I took a deep breath and started my walk casually towards the forgotten end of the yard. My heart hammered against my ribs. It felt loud, too loud. Surely someone could hear it. I glanced towards CO Reynolds. He was by the tower, sipping from his thermos, his back mostly to me. Good. I reached the old bleachers. They were even more dilapidated up close. Rusted metal, rotting wood planks, weeds growing underneath. I pretended to tie my shoe and scanned the area quickly. No one was looking my way. This was it. I slipped behind the first row of seats. It was darker here, cooler, and the sounds of the yard seemed muffled. I was hidden, for now. I remembered HardMike's words, old things. I started searching the underside. The ground was dusty, littered with old cigarette butts and candy wrappers. My fingers brushed against loose soil under the third plank from the left, just as I'd vaguely recalled him gesturing. I dug a little. My heart leaped. There was something hard, a plastic bag wrapped tightly with duct tape. It wasn't very big, maybe the size of a thick paperback book, but it felt heavy, dense. This had to be it. HardMike's treasure. I pulled it out, my hands shaking. I tucked it inside my waistband under my loose shirt. It felt bulky, obvious. Getting out was harder. I had the prize. Now I was a target. I peered through a gap in the bleachers. Reynolds hadn't moved. The yard was still busy. I took another deep breath and stepped out casually. I started walking back towards the center of the yard, trying to look bored like I'd just been exploring. Every step felt like an eternity. I imagined eyes burning into my back, but no one called out. No alarms sounded. I made it to my dorm. My hands were slick with sweat. I'd done it. Back in the relative privacy of my bunk, I finally examined my prize. My hands still trembled as I carefully unwrapped the duct tape. Inside the plastic bag were several smaller, tightly packed baggies, each filled with dense, fragrant weed. It was good quality, just like the rumors said. HardMike had known his stuff. A wave of relief washed over me, followed by a surge of exhilaration. I had done it. I had taken a huge risk, and it had paid off. For now. That first night, I allowed myself a small indulgence, just a tiny pinch, rolled into a thin cigarette with paper borrowed from a Bible. The smoke was smooth, the effect even smoother. The constant tension in my shoulders eased. The endless chatter in my head quieted. For a little while, the gray walls of my cell seemed less confining. The scratchy blanket felt softer. Sleep came easier than it had in months. It was a small escape, but it felt like a lifeline, a precious secret. Soon, word got around, in whispers, of course, that I might have access to something desirable. I was careful, very careful. I only dealt with a few trusted individuals, people I knew wouldn't talk, or people who had too much to lose themselves. The trades were discreet, a small baggie for a warm meal smuggled from the kitchen, another for a stack of commissary cookies, or a new book. My quality of life improved dramatically. Little comforts made a big difference. Having the stash changed things. It gave me a certain status, not like a gang leader, but as someone resourceful, someone who could get things. It was a subtle shift. A nod here, a friendly greeting there. People sought me out for quiet conversations. It was a strange feeling, a mix of power and paranoia. I was no longer just another faceless inmate. I was the woman who had HardMike's gold. It was a heavy crown to wear, even if it was invisible. Life with the stash was a double-edged sword. On one side, there were the comforts, the improved food, the small luxuries, the brief mental escapes. These things made the days more bearable. They added a splash of color to the monochrome existence of prison. I could even help out a few others, a little bit, for someone having a particularly bad week. That felt good, like I was doing something positive, in a place where positivity was a rare commodity. It was empowering, but the other edge was sharp. It was the constant fear of discovery. Every footstep outside my cell door made my heart jump. Every unexpected announcement over the PA system sent a jolt of anxiety through me. Shakedowns became terrifying. I had to find ingenious hiding spots for the main stash, and even more clever ones for the small amounts I kept for daily use or quick trades. Under a loose floor tile, inside a hollowed-out book, taped to the underside of my metal locker, always moving it, the paranoia was a constant companion. I started watching everyone, trying to read their faces. Was that CO looking at me too long? Did that inmate's friendly question have a hidden meaning? Trust became a luxury I couldn't afford, even with those I traded with. Every transaction was a risk. Every conversation could be a trap. Sleep, though initially improved by the weed, sometimes became fitful, filled with dreams of guards and dogs and sudden searches. The secret was a heavy weight. I learned to live with the fear, to manage it. I became more observant, more cautious. I developed a sixth sense for trouble. I learned to read the subtle shifts in the prison atmosphere, the way the guards walked, the tone of their voices. These were skills I never asked for, but they were essential for survival, especially now. I was no longer just serving my time. I was actively breaking a major rule every single day. The stakes were incredibly high. One evening during the standing count, it almost all came crashing down. We were lined up outside our cells. CO Davis was doing the count. He was new, eager to prove himself. He walked slowly down the line, scrutinizing everyone. I had a small baggie on me, tucked into my sock, ready for a trade later that night. Usually counts were routine. Stand still, be silent, get counted. But Davis was unpredictable. He liked to throw his weight around, to show he was in charge. He stopped in front of Maria, 2 inmates down from me. He patted her pockets. Roughly. He found nothing, but my heart started to pound. He was doing random pat-downs. This wasn't normal for a standing count. He moved to the next inmate, then to me. His eyes raked over me. I tried to look bored, indifferent, like I had nothing to hide. My palms were sweating. I could feel the small lump in my sock. It felt enormous, like a beacon. "Turn out your pockets," Davis snapped. His voice was flat, accusatory. I did, slowly. Lint, a button, nothing. He wasn't satisfied. "Shoes and socks," he ordered. My blood ran cold. This was it. I was caught. I could already feel the cold concrete of the SU, the disappointment of my family, the extra time. I bent down. My fingers fumbled with my shoelaces. My mind raced. Was there any way out? Any distraction? My heart was a trapped bird beating against my ribs. Just as I was about to pull off my sock, a commotion erupted at the end of the corridor. 2 inmates started shouting. A fight was brewing. Davis's head snapped up. His attention immediately diverted. "Stay put!" he barked at us. He hurried off towards the noise. The other COs converged. In the chaos, I quickly slipped the baggie from my sock. I palmed it. When Davis eventually returned, flustered and annoyed, he just finished the count quickly. He'd forgotten about my socks. I'd never felt such intense relief in my life. Luck, pure dumb luck. The stash, of course, didn't last forever. Like all good things in here, it was finite. The baggies got emptier. The trades became less frequent. I stretched it out as long as I could. But eventually the day came when I scraped the last few crumbs from the plastic. It was a bittersweet moment. Relief that the constant risk was over, but also a sense of loss. The small comforts, the status, the brief escapes, they were gone. Life would return to its previous duller rhythm. What did I gain from HardMike's gold mine? Tangibly, I got better food, some small luxuries, a brief respite from the daily grind. Intangibly, I gained a certain kind of respect, or perhaps notoriety. Some inmates saw me as resourceful, clever, others maybe as reckless. I learned a lot about the prison's undercurrents, about trust and the lack of it. I learned how to read people better, how to navigate the complex social landscape. These were valuable lessons. Hard won. Did I lose anything? Perhaps a sliver of innocence, though prison tends to strip that away pretty quickly anyway. I definitely lost some peace of mind during that time. The constant fear of getting caught took its toll. My standing with the other inmates shifted. I wasn't just another new fish, I was someone who had taken a big risk and for a while made it work. It gave me a different kind of identity, one that came with its own set of expectations and dangers. Looking back, as of today, June 2nd, 2025, with more time served and more experience, the risk seems even crazier. But I also understand the desperation that drove me. In a place designed to strip you of everything, finding a small measure of control, a small pleasure, can feel like a monumental victory. The weed was more than just a drug. It was a symbol, a brief, flickering flame of autonomy in a world of total control. It was a prison gold mine, and for a short time, it was mine.